If your organization is ready to enhance cyber resilience, we have important insights for you. The 2024 Level Blue Futures Report sheds light on how rapid computing changes affect IT visibility. Our research reveals that while IT leaders see positive outcomes, 85% acknowledge increased risk. In this report, we identify the barriers to cyber resilience, the challenges impacting cybersecurity, and the business contexts that reveal operational issues. You'll also discover what's on the horizon and 5 essential steps for prioritizing cyber resilience. Get your complimentary copy of this crucial research today. Visit securityweekly.com/levelblue. Cybersecurity simplified. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW387 if you want to follow along as we go through the news or click any of the links for the stories that we're going to be talking about today. All right, so jumping right in, because we did the 2024 wrap up today and there's not a lot going on. So we talked to Mike Prevet earlier in the show. There's not really much funding to talk about. I think Fastly raised a venture round, and it was a pretty big venture round, but this is a very late stage company. They could, probably IPO if they wanted to next year. So we'll see how that goes. So check out that conversation. We talked a lot about acquisitions and funding, both past and future in that segment. So we're not going to talk about it in the news today because I felt like that would be too much. So what we are going to start off with, AWS launched an incident response service. And I was like, what? Why would AWS get into consulting? And the more I think about it, the more I look about it, I think it does make sense. I've known a lot of AWS customers kind of caught out by incidents and, have a hard time getting support. Like maybe it's ransomware, somebody takes over their account, like the classic Code Spaces story, which happened over 10 years ago now. That's like 11 years ago, where they lost their whole business to a ransomware extortion attempt. Yeah. But yeah, it's very complex. It's constantly changing. The documentation can be, difficult to sort out. So I guess it probably makes some sense for AWS to have a response team that people can. I don't know if you subscribe to it ahead of time, if it's something where you have like a retainer for them, but it's certainly not free. It's something additional you have to pay for. Eamon, any thoughts on that? Is that were you aware of that, or is that new to you?
The service is new to me. It's funny, I cut my teeth on the cloud in an AWS response. So that's how I transitioned from on-prem to cloud. And that first incident, I didn't look back. So it was a root key compromise. So I think this is great. So it's they have the DDoS service. The name is escaping me for some reason, but where you pay for the higher tier and they'll protect you. They used to have a button actually where you could press the button and they'll call up the team. So I think it makes sense. It's probably not going to be a revenue generator. It's probably more like a headache reducer for them.
Yeah.
So
Customer success more.
yeah.
Customers. Yeah, it makes sense. In the screenshot. So there is a link in the article we shared, which was TechCrunch, to the AWS article about it. And they've got some nice screenshots and everything kind of showing what the process is like. Very much in AWS fashion. There's a whole form that you fill out to create a case, and everything's all software driven here. So it's not like you call 1-800-HELP AWS and
Oh, that's fascinating. They even support delegated administrator. That's fascinating. So, which is a good practice to have, a dedicated security account. So that's cool.
I wouldn't expect anything less, right? Like that's the value of having the service through AWS is they're going to think about it from a kind of
Well,
cloud first AWS perspective, right?
Yeah, yeah. Although a lot of things when it comes out of AWS is very like, raw. Uh, uh,
Yeah.
New services out of AWS are very raw to be defined. Yeah, hopefully that's a nice word.
Yeah.
So,
No, I know exactly what you mean. I have
yeah,
experienced some of that rawness myself.
yeah.
I mean, I think this makes sense, right? If you look at the continued adoption of more and more cloud services, you look at the continued move towards MSPs, MSSPs for so many organizations, rather than going through an MSSP or an MSP, why not go through AWS? Especially if you're a smaller organization, AWS only house makes a lot of sense. Um, it's a lot quicker and easier than hiring an MSP or an MSSP or a third party consultant to come in and try to figure out everything from the ground up. Those teams have great expertise, don't get me wrong, but if you got a problem in your AWS and now you've got essentially your MSSP at AWS, that's a straighter line to solve the problem.
Well, and honestly, I can see a lot of scenarios where you're going to have both, where
Sure.
AWS handles the AWS portion of the breach, and you're still going to have a traditional incident response team dealing with the larger breach. A lot of these probably won't be contained to just AWS.
Sure, but I'm thinking in the case mostly of smaller businesses.
Yeah.
Certainly, what you said could be the case too, but if it's a smaller shop, having a source to go to, or even having AWS to go to, and they can coordinate it. I don't know if that's part of it, But if you're a smaller business, a medium-sized business with fewer resources, you want help. You want help fast, and you may not have a dedicated security team, IT team, cloud team, whomever on site. So
There's some quick call outs I want to jump to here before there are definitely some meatier topics that we're going to probably go deeper on. But I just want to call out some quick ones here. Story number two, people who've been listening to the podcast for a while probably know that I worked at Thinkst for a while. So I still keep track of their blog. I see what they're up to. They do a lot of fun stuff, and they've had it in beta for a while, but they have credit card canary tokens now, and I believe they're all Amex. So basically they partnered with like an issuer or something like that to generate fake credit card numbers that look and function as real credit card numbers for the purpose of entrapping somebody into using them and using it as a honey token. So that's a fun one. Um, certainly not the typical kind of deception breadcrumb or technique that you're used to seeing. So hats off for the creativity there. And then story number three is a supply chain firewall, and this
Mm,
was created by Datadog here, and it's a very simple tool. It basically like imagine you're going to install a gem or something from PyPy or npm or something like that, and you don't know if that thing you're about to install is malicious or not. So basically, you install it through the supply chain firewall tool that they've created, and it just does a simple lookup on that package to tell you if okay, this is a typo squatting thing, we're not going to install it, and we're going to tell you why we're not installing it, or it's straight up malware, or had something fishy about it. It's been flagged as malicious, right? So kind of baked into your software installer, you can probably just implement this as an alias on all your developers' workstations, or wherever in your environment you might be using npm install or something like that, and be totally invisible. They don't even know it's running in the background, and it'll protect you if you try to install a malicious package.
yeah, and I like your suggestion about making it into an alias. So that was that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So I type npm install, and I don't know that behind the scenes, npm is not the binary that I'm getting. Instead, I'm getting an alias that runs scfw run npm
Hmm.
and then takes the rest of my command line. and just
Yeah.
feeds. So really cool tool, like stupid simple and just a great example of like the ideal security tool that can be frictionless in the background. Like I'm sure there's a couple of extra seconds of latency for it to do this lookup to see if the package is malicious or not. And but generally you're installing packages, you don't expect that to be instantaneous. So I think that'll be fine with everybody. The extra couple of seconds there. The other quick one I wanted to mention, number 6, and we just didn't get to this in a previous week. This has been going around for a while, but Cisco notified its customers that there's an ASA flaw from 11 years ago in 2014 being exploited in the wild. And the attack vector is the web console. So for those of you that haven't patched your Cisco ASA in 11 years and have the web console exposed to the public internet and aren't compromised yet, you're about to be, or you probably already
I have nothing nice to say there. So,
are. It's going to be a quick one. We're not going to linger on that. Just a reminder to scoop up all your abandoned infrastructure and unmanaged infrastructure and take care of that, please.
Patch those 11-year-old vulns right now, people.
I mean, just don't put your device on the internet. Like, please
Yeah.
don't. I don't care what it
Administrative
is.
interfaces should not be on the public internet. Let's just
That's
say
it. Yeah.
that. Yeah, that's it. That's the message. That's the um, we've got a new fund here. Very interesting. Cleo Capital launched a cybersecurity accelerator. I don't know the details of it or how much funding comes out of that, but you can sign up for that accelerator now. I think they're accepting. I think I put it in the show notes here. Yeah, the deadline to apply is January 20th with a February 24th start date. So if you're very early stage startup, seed stage, I don't know if they take Series A, like what the different parameters for acceptance are here, but yeah, you might want to check that out.
Looks like they're taking the YC model where it's like a 12-week program
Mm-hmm.
and 250 for 7% equity. So it's interesting.
Okay.
And then they have they're saying up to 10 companies will be selected. So I guess you apply, for the round. So it looks like they're taking the YC model.
Yeah.
That's
Sounds very.
interesting.
Yeah. YC being Y Combinator for folks that
Yes.
aren't startup savvy. Yeah, so the next one, we actually mentioned this in our last conversation that Snowflake will block single factor authentication by November 2025. This is, of course, a direct response to a bunch of their customers getting breached. And I think we have the other story here about that actor getting arrested in Canada. So we did find that actor thanks to Brian Krebs. That's story number 12. He was apparently trolling Brian Krebs, and Krebs was tracking him. So he helped identify him, track him down, and the police have arrested him. I don't know if he's getting what's the term? Not exfiltrated.
Extradited.
Extradited. Thank you. Is a different extra.
Yeah, the extra.
The U.S. or not, but yeah, this is a direct response to that. I remember when even when Salesforce did this, I think they only did it for admins. I remember we had somebody on the show come on and talk about what it was like enforcing MFA for Salesforce customers, but I think it was just the admins. Katie, I don't know if you remember that conversation. So this is kind of bold to say, yeah, this is going to be for everybody.
I remember it vaguely.
Yeah, we're going back 2 years plus here.
At least, yeah.
I'm sure it's in my Notion notes.
This is interesting. It's like where does the responsibility fall? On the provider or on the user? And I don't know. I have to tell you, I think when you reach a certain level, or if you're holding a certain amount of data, you have a responsibility to mandate this.
Yeah.
Come on, like this conversation was like in 2020 or 2022. Now it's almost 2025, and they're not even going to do it until the end of no end of 2025. So I push hard on this. Like if you're holding any type of critical data, yes, the very least is mandated for admins, right? That's just the least thing you could do. So I think a lot of responsibility should go on vendors to coach their users
Yeah.
or migrate their users over to it. I mean, it's mandatory in Gmail now, right?
Yeah, I think it's something you have to monitor, right? If you see a large portion of them not only not using second factor authentication, but also with passwords that are easily guessable or can be
Yeah,
credential stuffed, yeah, you probably should do something for your customers.
yeah.
Sorry, go
Gamify
ahead.
the login, right? Like have a meter even just having a meter when you're entering the password. Is your password strong or not? Like there is to somehow sorry, the biggest method to get someone to do something, they say is like shame. Now I don't mean shaming them, but like for example, studies show that like if you go to a neighborhood and you say, "Oh, your neighbor got this," they use it a lot. Salespeople use that a lot. It's like, "Oh, my neighbor got it. I should get it too." So
Yeah.
Yeah.
anyway,
I mean, my first thought, I mean, when to your point, when I read this was, why is it going to take 11 months to a year? Like, what is the holdup here? This isn't something that requires a slow and steady rollout. Um, and I think the question of who is responsible, security people have been yelling for a long time. People aren't security conscious. People don't take security seriously. People aren't doing insert X what security wants them to do. And I'm not saying you should force everybody's hand in security, but just like, and I think I said it last week too, and maybe this is going to be my 2025 mantra, just like I don't care how HR goes about evaluating my benefits for my company. I don't care what controls they use to roll out my paycheck every week in finance or do their accounts processing, accounts payable, accounts receivable. I don't care if they're doing their job right and I'm getting paid on time. If they're doing their job right and I'm receiving my healthcare benefits, great. Big thumbs up for that, right? Security has to be that way too, and it has to be more seamless. And if we see something that is threatening companies, that is putting companies and individuals, especially consumers, at risk, it is our job to embed security. We have enough tools at this point to do a lot of things pretty seamlessly, pretty
hmm
automatically, take away a lot of pain and keep a lot of people a lot more secure. And it shouldn't be this whole hand wringing, oh, security is so hard. No, let's get over this hump and do the right things for our users, whether our users are companies or at the end of the day, whether our users are companies who are serving companies who are serving consumers. There are just some things like, when I drive down the highway, and I'm going to another state, I have to pay toll. Nobody gives me an option. Nobody's like, no, you can't pay that toll, right? It's a little weird analogy, but it's late in the day and I'm tired. But it's the same thing. Technology evolves. We have to start thinking about enforcing protections that are pretty painless at this point. We just spent 40 minutes talking about passkeys.
Mhm.
2FA isn't as seamless as that, but it is a protection. It does add the layer, and it's not going to hurt anybody in the way they think it is. Let's just get over it and let's do things and get people more familiar with doing the right thing so that when the next thing comes along that's easier, it's a flip of a switch, literally.
And it's like this is the age old security experience that we've had, right? Is the best time to adopt security measures is right after you're made a fool of, right after a big breach, right after a big negative impact from not doing some best practices or having the right controls in place. So I wonder, yeah, as Snowflake plans to do this. Certainly, some portion of this is, providing a show that they're doing something, right? That they're doing something to help their customers. What about all Snowflake's peers? Shouldn't this whole class of service and product all be doing this at once at the same time? But it's not regulated, so I don't see Snowflake's peers making the same announcement. The bad thing hasn't happened to them yet, so they don't have to do it. I mean, I don't know.
But how
Seems,
short-sighted is that, right?
yeah.
Like if you
And-
see something
and-
so massive happening in your industry, I mean, it doesn't mean that that thing is going to happen to you. Nobody wants to go around being super negative and, oh my God, it's a matter of, not a matter of when, but, or not a matter of if, but when. But at the
Right.
same time, it should be a way, hey, there's something pretty easy I can do. Is it going to cost money? Yes. Is it going to take effort? Yes. What's going to be worse, spending a little bit of time and effort and money, or going through the kind of thing that Snowflake just did and potentially making life really bad for a lot of people for a long time?
Yeah. And it's, you can see by reading the blog, you can see why they might not elect to do this by default. And like it's a three-phased approach. They have a lot of different account types, different authentication options. There's single sign-on, SAML, OAuth, key pair authentication, password-based authentication. There's human accounts. There's service accounts. So it's not a simple thing to switch over there. And they say it's going to be a three-stage approach, which with April 2025 enable for all accounts the default authentication policy with MFA enforced on password sign-ins for human users. And then August 2025 enforce MFA on all password-based sign-ins for human users. So enforcement, not just enable. And then finally, by November 2025, they're going to block sign into Snowflake using single factor authentication with passwords for all users, whether human or service accounts. So it's a staged rollout.
Okay, so I see why it might take a little longer than at first blush, but at the same time, I feel like this is something that should have been started. Snowflake is not a they're in the business of data.
Yeah.
And it feels to me like that should have been thought of from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, it was there as an option, so it goes back to that shared responsibilities. Where should that line be? We're not really sure. So as things get breached and customers have bad outcomes, okay, maybe we need to shift that line a little bit. And that's what we see happening here. All right, Eamon. So I know you've got to let you go here soon. So I wanted to cover story number 9. So this is I think the second big study I've seen about phishing training just really not being very effective in practice. And a couple, I think this was before you were a co-host. We had our friend Wolfgang come on and talk about this is something he's very passionate about. Not security awareness as much. This I think also covers security awareness, but specifically phishing training, phishing employees. So you've got some thoughts on this?
Oh yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts on this, but I'm going through the doc, and well, let's have a discussion on it because I'm curious what your takeaways on it are, from going over the doc.
Yeah, so I remember probably close to 15 years ago now. Dave Itel, if you all know who Dave Itel is, was very anti-phishing training. He said this is a waste of time. And it was kind of if you can't, you can't do prevention across all your employees, then what's the point? Which, I kind of took the other side and I was like, well, like if you can reduce the number of incidents you're having, like you don't need perfect security across employees, then yeah, maybe it's worth it. And I don't know if it's just the way that companies do phishing training,
Yeah.
because there are metrics you can get out of your phishing training tools that say, yes, they are less likely to click on a phishing link now. But I think the point here is that it's just not enough to be worth it. It's one of those things where, uh, again, to Dave's point, if people are going to fail anyway, you need to focus on being prepared for those failures. And I think in practice, what we saw in the industry is because it's easy to just sign up for phishing training and to shove it into users' faces. Like you're not only hurting productivity, this is something people don't want to do. Some companies were using it to fire employees if you failed enough phishing trainings, if you clicked enough phishing emails,
Yeah.
you get fired.
Crazy.
So there are a lot of really bad outcomes here where, yeah, if you're not prepared for that inevitable employee that does click a fish, because I think it's been shown like 100% of people will fall for a fish eventually if the fish is good
Mm.
enough or good
Hmm.
enough. If you compromise somebody else's email account, so it's actually coming from the correct account, using the correct signature, and the correct context. I think it just doesn't make sense to do if you're not prepared to do the detect and respond when the failure does occur. So that's kind of my take.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So there's so much to say. It's the funny thing is, every time I meet someone new and they find out I'm in cybersecurity, the first thing they tell me is what? Oh, you're the guys going out to get us, right? Trying to
Yeah,
get us from the phishing, and some people take it as a game, like, oh, how many people are we going to get today? And that's not the right approach for phishing,
yeah,
like hands down. So that's number one. I mean, like literally, I was in line. Um, we were getting ready to go scuba diving, and one guy, we're just waiting for our tanks to get filled and whatever it is, and he's like, he finds out I'm in security. He's like, that's exactly what he said to me. He's like, you guys are always out to get us, and he sees us as and it's a bad way to set up yourself to someone as the antagonist. Like that's not really a good way to start a relationship.
my
So
partner's in supercomputing, and their RSA every year is called SC, the SC conference, supercomputing conference. So all the HPC people get together, and we're meeting with someone that she had been talking to that wanted to meet in person. Just like in our industry, it's an opportunity for hallway con, for networking, meeting people in person. And she asked me what I did, and when I said cybersecurity, her knee jerk response, like it was just an emotional, immediate response that went through no filters in her brain. She said, "Ew."
no way.
That was her response, because and then she proceeded over the next hour to go through this rant about how she can't get her folks time on the supercomputer, because it takes 4 months to get an account, and an
Mm.
account requires this and that, and some of them are interns and they're only there for 3 months, and by the time they get an account they're gone, and it's just this, in that world, there still is a lot of Department of No type stuff going on, and these just really egregious requirements, and to set up an account and to get access to it. And there's physical RSA keys still in use,
Yeah.
all kinds of, key fob stuff.
It's kind of like when we found out that 2FA, oh, sorry, when changing your password every 90 days was an anti-pattern,
Yeah,
right? And so, and still now to this day, people are still not aware of that.
yeah.
And they still ask it on questionnaires. And like I answer, I'm like, well, NIST has, said that this is not a good security
Years
practice. And they're
ago
like, well,
now.
what? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And so I think it's going to be the same way with phishing. It's going to take, I think it's going to be a lot harder actually.
yeah,
Like, what? What are you talking about? And you know what? Not only that, but I think people need to know how to do phishing properly. So if you're going to do it, just like driving a car,
yeah,
do it the right way and stay away from matters like payroll. Like a lot of people doing phishing around this time
yeah.
start,
Bonuses. Yeah,
yeah, bonuses. Oh my God. Like you want to get people
it's
upset.
horrible. The Chicago Tribune, look up that story.
Mm, mm. Tell me.
Yeah, so they took away their holiday bonuses, and then they decide the phishing test like 2 weeks after employees find out they're not getting holiday bonuses was, oh, bonuses are back.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah.
so bad.
And then in San Diego, University of California, San Diego, the phishing test was that somebody came back with Ebola, and Ebola was like loose
Oh my God.
and spreading. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they undermine the actual
Trust.
virus, the whole procedure of telling people that there's a bio emergency, right?
Wow. I mean, like, think about how much trust you erode in people, you
Yeah.
know? Like, that is just the wrong way to do your job. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So,
Now
yeah.
when there actually is a deadly virus, people are going
Yeah,
to be like, is this a phishing email? Can
exactly.
I ignore this?
No, no joke, no joke. When I actually needed a USB stick a couple weeks ago, I'm at a client and I'm like, I need a USB stick so I can reset this computer. And people thought I was trying to fish them or like test them. I'm like, no, I'm
Yeah.
for real. Like, can you like I need a USB stick and nobody believed me. Can you believe that? I'm not kidding. This is a true story.
I absolutely can believe that. Yeah, and so that's anti-pattern is the right term here. Like I've heard of users who just critical emails. They refuse to open them because they think they look shady. There
Yeah.
are a lot of real third parties and like payroll providers. Like I get a lot of stuff that's valid. That is just it's so awful the way it's written. It totally looks like a phishing email. It totally looks scammy, but that's just how they decided to design it. They're just aloof. Not aware of how it comes off. The way they put together the second factor authentication email that you get or whatever
Yeah.
it might be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they're using a weird like URL shortener and everything. Like
Mm,
the whole thing
not
of
again.
check the URL doesn't work when your third parties are actually using shady looking URLs that are not associated with them.
Yeah.
But it's just an easy way for them to do it. So that's what they do. So yeah, so changing your passwords every 90 days, there wasn't a whole multi-billion-dollar market segment built around that,
Mm,
but there is on phishing training. So that's
mm.
the big difference here. So you're right. This is going to be in regulations for a while, but we've got public cybersecurity companies based around doing this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and
Fascinating.
it's also one of those false metrics, right? We're always being asked in security, how do you show improvement? And then you get answers like, well, how do you show, that you're doing well when the absence of anything is doing well? Sort of that, flippant type of response. Well, showing pass fail on a test is a good way to create metrics, but they're fake metrics that don't actually equate to anything. And so
Yeah.
even if it's just in that sense, these tests hurt the validity of security programs because you're saying,
Yeah.
hey, we're doing great. Everybody knows about security. Everybody passed this test. Well, just because they passed this test doesn't mean you don't have a vulnerability in your software. It doesn't mean that somebody still can't get ransomed. I mean, there are just so
I
many
mean,
things,
nobody will let Eamon borrow a USB key. We've clearly
right?
broken trust.
The
We've done
Yeah.
something
man
very
just
wrong here.
needs a USB.
I know.
He just needs a flash drive, guys. Come on.
One contrarian thing, and I do have to go. One contrarian thing is to actually let people know you're going to do a phishing test in the next 2 weeks or
Yeah.
next week or something. It's a little contrarian,
But not telling
but
him the details. Yeah.
yeah. And then that way, every other time they could be on guard, right?
Yeah.
And
It doesn't have
know,
to be complete black box, right?
Yeah,
yeah,
but like,
yeah.
what's wrong with that? When I was in undergrad, and I know you have to go, so I'll keep this short, but we had specifically for our music history tests, we had essay exams, and we were given 3 topics, and we were told your essay exam will be on one of these 3 topics. So we could go home and we could do all the research and write it out and
Yeah.
dig into it. You just didn't know which one you were going to get on exam day. They do
Right.
the same thing, from what I understand, on that show Top Chef that used to be on Food TV years ago.
Oh,
They
yeah.
would give them like 5 ingredients that might be their secret ingredient. What's wrong with that? Either way, you get
Because they
people
want them to
thinking.
perform well. Ultimately,
Right. And
we
if you
don't want employees
Yeah.
to fail.
Hey, we're
Yeah.
going to have a
Yeah.
test. Study up, folks.
Yeah.
That's good for everybody.
Well, we had a few technical difficulties today, and Eamon's got to go. So a few of these stories that we didn't touch on, I'll move to next week. Thanks so much, Katie and Eamon, for joining me today. It's been a lot of fun. A lot of great stuff. Eamon, we'll let you go here in just a moment. And big thanks to everybody watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. Next week, we'll be talking to Peter Paloroumakis about the MITRE Defend framework. They just hit 1.0 and came out with some very cool tools. So excited to talk to him. And Lynn Dome about women in cybersecurity. So don't miss next week's episode and our last episode of the year. We'll see you then.